Well, welcome everyone to another edition of Someone You Should Know. Glad to have you with us again. And I'm going to be turning the clock way back because my guest in the studio is a lifelong friend, and he's joining us from Jacksonville, Florida.
Hold on.
And hello, Mike Miller.
Hello there, Stuart. How are you?
You're there, and something had the volume up, and I do the same thing.
Well, I've got you on phone, and I've got you on my iPad, so you're all over the place here.
Oh, so there's two people watching, you and me.
You and I, whoever else has got brave enough to put us on, I guess.
Well, welcome. How's everything in Jacksonville, Florida?
We're good. We're starting to open up, as our other states, of course. We opened up our beaches before other people did, which I, as well as a number of other people, were very reluctant to see happen because we weren't sure that people were going to, go along with the CDC guidelines. And wouldn't you know it, of course, they didn't, because the order that had gone out for our beaches was there would be no beach chairs and no blankets allowed. You had to keep walking or running or swimming. You couldn't hang around. And they also wanted everyone to maintain 6 feet distances. So everybody just forgot about it, or most everybody forgot about it when they first opened. But now they're getting into it a little bit more, so it's getting better, and they're loosening up the restrictions as well.
Am I correct? I think that the Jacksonville beaches were one of the first beaches in the country to open up.
Yeah, our governor.
For the South beaches down.
Oh, well, the real hot spots are the 3 counties in the South. Broward, Dade, and Palm Beach counties. Those are the real hot spots. More so Dade than the other 2. But they held off quite a long time. Our beaches have been open for almost a month.
And what are the reports? Is it going well? Have they seen any kind of a spike in new diagnoses?
Actually, I was watching the numbers this morning, and we've actually seen a decrease in the number of cases. And this is all in comparison to a month ago. But we're starting to see a decrease. We've gone well past the curve, and we're on the downside of the curve right now. But a lot of people still are saying there's going to be a second wave in this whole thing. So don't get too complacent with what's going on.
I suppose the fact that this disease does not do well in warm temperatures.
Well, I've heard that, but I tell you, you can tell the 53,285 cases in the state of Florida that warm weather kills the virus. It doesn't kill the virus. It may impede it to some way, but it doesn't. We have, and I took all these numbers down for the show, but as I said, over 53,000 cases statewide. In Duval County, where I am, we've had 1,523 cases and 46 fatalities as a result of it. Our 5-county area here has 2,390 cases and 88 people have passed away. Statewide, 2,364 people have passed away as a result of COVID.
It just really blows my mind to think that we have surpassed that 100,000 death threshold in less than 6 months. And just looking over figures, and you and I are both fact and figure type people, I realized that there have been almost more people that have died from the COVID-19 than in all wars since World War II.
Well, and I was going to bring that point up because it's very relevant to you, of course, but we now have almost reached twice as many fatalities from COVID as we did through the 13 years of the Vietnam War. I mean, that in itself is remarkable.
That's right.
We thought at that point that it was devastating for our country to have 53,000 people die as a result of Vietnam, but here we're passing 100,000, and some of the latest predictions and models are showing now that we'll probably get up to about 130,000 by the 1st of August. That's not to say that's going to be the top limit, but
Right.
that's what they're projecting now in the next 3 months or two
Well,
months.
yeah, certainly the onus now is on finding the vaccine that's going to fight the disease, being able to fast track it, get it into production, and get it out to people in order to at least slow it. The fascinating thing about this disease is it's not necessarily a disease that people are contracting. It is actually being contracted to them. For instance, one of the largest areas of
Oops, sorry.
for the death rate was showing in nursing homes. Well,
Yes.
it wasn't the people in the nursing homes that were getting the virus. It was the healthcare workers that were going out and coming in on a daily basis that were interacting with other people. And so it's, and I mean, there is just no way to control that. I mean, if people are out in the public going to the grocery store, it only takes a split second for somebody to touch something and contract the disease. It doesn't show up right away. It is delayed. Then they get sick, and you sit them down and you say, okay, who have you interacted with over the last 14 to 21 days? I mean, it's hard to tell.
Yep, it really is. I mean, so much of our life is disrupted, and I like everybody else, are waiting to see what the new normal is going to be like. Because
Yeah.
we really don't know what it's going to be like. I mean, I'm still trying to think what it would be like to have 80,000 people in a football stadium watching the Jaguars, and that's just not going to happen. You can't do 6 feet of separation with people that got season tickets, to their seats, and saying, "Wait a minute, you blocked off my seat. I can't go."
Exactly. I mean, look, the Indianapolis 500 gets over 100,000 people, and they talked about maybe running the race without anybody in the stands. I mean,
Mhm.
financially, that's devastating. For the drivers, they don't frankly care
No.
whether fans in the stands or not, because they're concentrating on the tarmac. They did run the Darlington 400 a couple weeks ago and all without any fans in the stands, and it was an exciting race. I happened to watch it on television, but the only thing that you saw was any interaction in the pits,
Right.
and that was it. But when you talk about an entire baseball season right now, start up, and here in Texas, they're talking about maybe opening up the stadiums once they decide how it's all going to work. But allow 25% of the ticket holders in, and spacing. What's it going to do for the concession stands?
Oh, everybody. The
You
impact is just it's uncalculable when you really think about it in those terms. One thing that I saw in the paper, which I thought was kind of interesting, and I'm not sure which stadium did it, but one stadium has decided to open up their doors to turn it into a drive-in theater, and they're going to be showing movies on the jumbo screens and letting cars come down, and they're going to be marked with separation between them. But I thought that was a
Yeah,
great idea.
in Fort Worth, there is one of the largest and only drive-in movie theaters in northern Texas that's doing that, and I think every other space is being utilized, and they're going to beam concerts. They want to do movies and things like that because people are getting itchy. They want to get out, and it's probably our generation that is that is most resistant to doing it, because we're probably at the greatest risk. But we've driven by restaurants, and outdoor dining seem to be doing some business. Those with indoor, some are open, some are not. They
Mhm.
had to move half of the tables to the side to keep spacing within the tables. But it's kind of this, let's meet halfway, because we can't afford to keep all these businesses closed, but we need more than 25% occupancy in order to make our bottom line.
Right, right. By the way, my sister just texted me in that it's Dolphin Stadium that's doing the drive-in movies in Miami.
Oh, okay.
So that's cool. That's pretty cool.
Yep. Is she gone yet?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. First of all, I don't think she'd want to drive all the way down there. She lives in Boca, of course.
Just to go to a drive-in movie.
Yeah, go to a drive-in movie.
So what's the situation with restaurants in your area? Are they
Restaurants at this
open?
point, yes, they are open. Most of them are open, I should say, but they're at 25% occupancy. So they're being very, very careful about that. It's tough. But I'll tell you, the delivery and curbside pickups has been very successful for a lot of restaurants. And obviously there's the human impact there because, the kitchens are working as they're supposed to, but there are no frontline people out on the floor. Those people obviously have been furloughed or laid off or something of that. And again, they're going to move up to 50%, I'm told, and then we'll see where they go after that.
Yeah, well, with the curbside sales and the pickup window sales, the restaurants can still make a pretty decent living for the cooks and all. But as you say, it's the wait help. Those are the people that depend on tips in order to make a living, and they are just not working, or they are only working, and the facility is only allowing 25% in. So that's cutting that income flow to them. Yeah, and I'm finding that the grocery stores, of course, are all open. I think Costco nationwide will not allow anyone in the store without a mask now, and hand sanitizers and wipes and all are available for people to wipe their carts and all. But I go to the grocery store, and I'm telling you, it's maybe 50% of the people that are shopping are wearing masks. The cashier, the checkout cashiers and everything are. They've all put in those plexiglass barriers in between,
Right.
and they're upholding that. But the people that are coming in are, I have a problem with them not respecting the other people that they're shopping with. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm scared, but every precaution we can make is going to be a positive precaution. And there's a lot of people that say, I don't need to bother with it. It's not going to affect me. And I hope it doesn't, but you're increasing the risk that it will if you are not covering and not respecting other people.
Looking at it from another point of view, I just saw this come out yesterday, where at this point, the revenue going into the state of Florida, and as you know, so much of our revenue is dependent upon the sales tax and tourism.
Occupancy, yeah.
We don't have a state income tax here. So those are very important revenue streams for the state. We've lost $878 million due to the COVID crisis. We did get an announcement where Disney, which employs 70,000 people, Disney World in Orlando, is going to be opening the Magic Kingdom up on July the 11th. And then they're going to open up Epcot and Hollywood Studios on July 15th. So again, we're talking about at least another 45 days before those two areas are going to be open. I understand SeaWorld and Universal are going to follow suit. But with all of those closed, if you can imagine what kind of revenue 7% of everything that they spend money on normally goes back to the state of Florida, that's a big hit that we're getting. And the other part of that, which is interesting, is by constitutional law, Florida is not allowed to deficit spend. So the real question is, okay, now we've got to match up with the budget, what we can afford to do versus what we normally would do or would even borrow against in order to do it. Infrastructure, programs, schooling, education, so on and so forth. So here in Florida, because of the income tax more than anything else, I think, and our reliance on the tourism area, it's going to be a very interesting year, a very tough year for a lot of people.
Yeah, and again, you threw out the number that Disney employs 70,000 people. Well, if it's going to take almost all of those people to operate the park on a given day, you have to have a sufficient number of people that are coming in to the park and that are spending their money. Is that going to be a restriction also? Are they starting with 25% or 50%? It's going to be unlimited admissions.
No, they're talking about it. They're saying that as long as people are maintaining social distancing, they'll keep it open. They are going to limit the number of people there. Everybody who enters the parks, all of them, are going to have their temperatures taken before they're allowed to enter. If they have a fever, they're not going to be allowed in. They're all going to be, it's mandated that both all employees and the guests are going to have to wear masks. I can't help but remember, Stuart, 100 years ago when you used to play a character at Disney World.
Chip of Chippendale.
That's right. I can't. I hope your listeners can really try to visualize you playing Chip of Chippendale when you first moved down to Orlando. But the important thing is, I'm waiting to see how the Imagineers, as you know they call them, are going to be putting masks on the characters, because I bet they're going to. They're going to have to.
Well,
Just
you
as a-
got
as
you
a
got to
sample.
believe. Yeah, you got to believe that the tourists that are getting off of the tram and the trains and everything at the entrance are going to see a masked Mickey and Minnie waving to people and welcoming them into the park. Uh,
Yeah.
and so that's going to be a sight to see. It'll probably make the news, but it's going to be sending the right message to the people that are there, that it may look a little bit strange, but it's for a reason. And
Yeah.
the only other thing was, we both know, having been to Disney many times, when you say you're going to have social distancing, 6 feet. I mean, for people that wanted to go to any of the attractions, I mean,
Mhm.
get hundreds of people at a time waiting in line to go into those attractions, and if they got to keep them 6 feet apart, I mean, boy, that's gonna create its own mess.
Well, for those who have ever have gone to a grocery store during these days rather, they'll probably notice on the ground that there's a stripe that every 6 feet telling people this is where you stand before you go to the register to check out. Well,
Right.
you take a look at the lines that are there for Space Mountain and Cinderella's Castle and all the other things. You're talking about thousands of people, not just a few people that might be in a grocery store. And how they're going to really supervise that, I don't know. It's going to be very tough.
The line will be backed up to Tampa.
Exactly. Exactly.
Out the gate, through the parking lot, down the highway. So what else?
By the way, a couple of other things.
Right.
Well, other than being shelter in place, not too terribly much. I'm on the phone and texting like crazy with all kinds of people, just to stay in touch with them. My family did a Zoom meeting not too long ago. In fact, Judy was the one who put it all together, which was really kind of fun. We had cousins on there. We were all talking to one another, and at the same time, I couldn't get a word. Thinking of me, who can't shut up, I couldn't get a word in edgewise, so I just sat back and looked at everybody else. But it was really fun, and I hope she does it again. We were all supposed to be going back home to Michiana in July, but I don't think that's going to happen. I'm not even sure we'd be able to fly there. But
Well, yeah, and our high school it was in the process of putting together a reunion for actually next month, and it was called the Last Look Reunion, because our high school, Hammond High School, is being torn down.
It's gone. It's gone already, buddy.
Is it to the ground already?
Yeah. One of my classmates keeps sending pictures and posting on there. So,
wow. Because one of the things we wanted to try and do with this Last Look Reunion was to be for all of us who attended that school to grab a brick to have as a keepsake or so. And if they're and old Chicago brick is at a premium in the Chicagoland area, so somebody's going to hands on all of that brick.
I'm not sure they're going to be as valuable as the ones from Hammond High. But there may still be some bricks, and they may be selling bricks too. Who knows?
Well, and we're talking about trying to still get together, but later in the summer or in September now. Yeah. But we've got a lot of good memories. I mean, we go back to that time. You just posted last week that after some heavy rains, The streets were flooding. In fact, probably it was your street. One of them was Belmont.
Uh, I'm sure it was. What they were showing was the underpass going into Eads School off Manor Drive.
Right. And folks, we're talking about viaducts under the railroad tracks that have been flooding ever since we were toddlers. And
Right.
they're still flooding, and they're still trying to talk about what are we going to do to stop this flooding. And
Yeah.
the picture, and it might as well have been a picture from 1950 because
Yeah.
it was just different water, same viaduct, but we go through a little bit of this here. We went through kind of a drought, and a lot of the level of the water went down so far that the docks were on dry land. So
we've had that.
their boats at their docks. So now we get this deluge of rain, which we've had over the last month, and the water has come up to the docks and over the docks and into the streets. And so now people can't get their boats into the lakes, and there's plenty of water. So it's always Mother Nature, Mother Nature is going to have the last laugh.
Yeah, well, to make matters worse, of course, in the state of Florida, with all of this going on, is that in 2 days we officially begin the hurricane season here. So, and that goes on to the 1st of November. So, with all the other problems that we have, if we get hit by major storms, and they're predicting we're going to have a busier than normal, storm season here in Florida.
I saw that.
It's just going to compound the problems that we already have. You can't find toilet paper anywhere. Can you imagine before a storm hits what it's going to be like at that point? So,
although if we do get flooding, all people got to do is dump all that toilet paper, and it'll just probably soak it all up.
Except they won't have any for their own use.
That's right. I always think about those people that bought houses with bidets and laughing and saying, I'm never going to use that. What goes around comes around.
Yeah, it really does. It really does.
Well, you mentioned earlier, I posted the show that we were going to be doing this morning. I posted it to a Hammond High Alumni Association Facebook.
Oh, good.
All kinds of folks from the old days are watching. A shout out to Benny Mayer, who's in Phoenix, and some of the folks.
By the way, he'd shoot you if he heard you say Benny. He
well,
would
but you see,
absolutely clobber you.
But I could say Benny because that's what we knew him as. I mean, I was Stewie. That was called Stewie when I was in high school. I don't even use Stu much anymore. I use Stuart. But hey, it is what it was.
Yeah, I know. But he's listening, so he is listening now. He just sent me a note to say he and Lydia are.
So he's probably fuming, and he'll send you another note.
He just said,
call me Bennett.
He just sent me a message that said, "I hate Benny."
That's well, but I mean, when we start to talk about some of the old friends and the old times and everything, it does bring back some great memories. You and I both studied broadcasting at Indiana University. You went on to Columbia School of Broadcasting, and
Columbia College. It wasn't Columbia School of Broadcasting. It was Columbia College.
It was. Is it still Columbia College, or is it?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
And then you made a career out of broadcasting. You and I started out. In fact, I'm gonna play a game with you right now. Okay. You know, they show you a picture and they want to know the first word that comes into your mind. Well, I'm gonna name some letters and you give me the city. Okay, because these are some of the call letters that are associated with Miller. Okay, there is one missing, and I'm going to go back to that at the end. But WLNR,
Lansing, Illinois.
All right. Then there was WLTH,
Gary, Indiana.
WDVO,
Orlando.
WTIC,
Hartford, Connecticut.
WXYZ,
Detroit.
WHDH,
Boston,
WIOD,
Miami,
WJNO,
West Palm Beach,
and WOKV.
here in Jacksonville. I was here in Jacksonville.
Yep. That's a lot of W's.
That is a, I never worked at a K station because I never got west of the Mississippi. So I almost did. I almost went to work at KGO. I got an interview, but I didn't get the job. But
That is fascinating. But there is one more, and it was really the very first W station. You and I worked at it. You remember what the call letters were?
are you talking about the one at IU?
WFQR, Foster Quadrangle.
Was it okay? I didn't remember the call letters. I don't think I was allowed to speak on the mic. I just had. It's kind of like a family Zoom meeting. I wasn't allowed to say anything. I just
Right. I recognize the face, but I don't recognize.
Yeah,
but,
not the voice.
But so of those stations that you did, were those all talk shows that you did?
Not well. No, not WLNR was not. That was all beautiful music at the time.
Right.
Henry Mancini music is still playing in my head because I had to play him every night. When I went to I'm trying to think. When I went to WLTH, I had a morning show, but it was kind of a music and talk show during the morning. There was a newsman who was also the general manager of the station, a guy named Warren Freiberg. And he used to do Warren Freiberg news and comment in the morning. So he would interrupt my show, as I used to call it, doing the news at the top of the hour. And then he'd comment about it. Well, one time I just got fed up with him, and I turned on the microphone and decided I was going to do some rebuttals to some of the ridiculous things he was saying. And then we had a meeting after the show, and he said, I like the way we did that. Why don't we do that more regularly? So then it was called Warren Freiberg and Friend kind of thing. And after every newscast, I'd come in and tell him how wrong he was. And that then turned the whole thing into a talk show. So not very much time doing music, except at IU.
And that was really the heyday of WLTH, because that was in Gary, Indiana, back when Richard Hatcher was the mayor, and when there were controversies and all, but it was a strong economy at that time, and LTH was a powerhouse at the time.
There were two stations, two powerful AM stations. LTH had a disadvantage, which I'll tell you about in a moment. But WGRY was the big one, and they were the top-rated one. The problem, and this is interesting, I don't think there are any stations doing this anymore, especially now with internet. We were a daytime radio station at WLTH. In other words, we broadcast from sun up till sundown. To any of our colleagues in the broadcast industry, if any of them are listening, the interesting thing was that for people in the Indiana, Illinois area, they know that in the wintertime, with Central Time, it got dark at 4:15 in the afternoon. It was almost pitch black by 5. Well,
before drive time.
We had to sign off at 4:15. And our sign-off period changed every month depending on what sunset was. But we lost all of the revenue in afternoon drive during the winter. But even more than that, as you know, mornings are the most revenue, producing time period of the day. And in the winter, again, we weren't allowed to sign on till 7:15. So we were only on from like 7:15 till 4:15 in the afternoon. And then we had to shut down after that.
And it's especially the time when people would want to turn into the local stations to find out what the weather reports were, if it was snowing or icy, and if there were accidents on the roadways. And you were just signing on and trying to play catch up.
Yeah, and my show was only on for an hour and 45 minutes during that period because I was only on until 9. So you start at 7:15, you're off at 9. That's not a long time to be on the air.
Interesting. And I
Yep.
guess you kind of follow the footsteps. Your sister was also in the media.
Yeah, Judy worked at WXYZ TV while I was at WXYZ Radio. So for a period of time, so that was fun. And then she went on to Denver to KMH. I forgot the last one. Excuse me.
She'll text you.
She'll text me.
You'll get a note.
I'll get it in a moment. I'll get it in a minute. Yeah. But yeah, we were in it for a while, and then she left. I stayed.
So I mean, you kind of semi-retired, I guess I should say, because you kind of left broadcasting in Jacksonville, but you started working with some of the government agencies in Jacksonville, consulting and also working on some boards. What was that all about? And
By the way, it was
enjoy that.
KMGH. Thank you, Judy. KMGH radio or television. Yeah, I left the radio station here in Jacksonville in the year 2000, and I got a phone call the day after I left because we did a big thing on the air of my last show and so on and so forth. And I got a phone call at that time from the mayor's office, the mayor of Jacksonville, who said he wanted to have a meeting with me. So I, of course, took the meeting. And then I went to work for his administration for the final 3 years that they were in office because of term limits. So I left there in 2003, and then the city's transportation authority called me and said, "What you were doing for the mayor, we'd like you to do for us." So I worked with them for 15 years. And that was only because at the time, my wife and I, when I left the radio station, we sat back and talked and said, what do we want to do now? Should I send out tapes to other radio stations and see what's out there? But at that time, her parents lived in St. Petersburg. My folks had already moved down basically to Boca. So both of our families were down there. And the idea of, I'd worked every market in Florida, so I didn't have any left. Which meant that the only place we'd have to go to are one of the other 49 states. Sure. I didn't really want to do that and leave our families at that time. So
now the connections that you made with the mayor's office and beyond that, was this because of some of the interviewing and all that you had done when you were on the radio? You had made all of those connections because you were still doing the talk radio at the time?
There was, well, that's interesting. I haven't thought about this in quite a while, but it's true. There was a very important campaign that the Delaney, it was his name, Mayor Delaney did. I guess it was about a year before I left radio, and it was for what was called a Better Jacksonville Plan, which was a huge citywide program of building new libraries and basically building a new amphitheater and all kinds of things. Roads were done and intersections were made better. And I was the only person on the air. And remember, doing a talk show, I was allowed to have opinions. And really, I was just about the only real non-sports talk show in the city of Jacksonville. So I came out and I was very supportive of the idea. And I would have the mayor on quite frequently, to talk about it, as well as other people, in public works and things like that, to talk about what is needed and how they're going to do it and everything else. And I mean, this was a $1.3 billion program, which needed a half-cent sales tax to be passed in order to fund it. And I was very supportive on the air about it. And when I went out and did talks, I talked about that as part of my presentation. So I think he felt somewhat, I don't know, he wanted to reward me in some way of doing it. So that's why. Plus, I've known all the other politicians in town, which he liked, because my primary job with him was acting as a liaison to the 19-member city council. So my job with that was to get all of our legislation passed. And since I knew all of them, he said, this is perfect. We've got a good reputation. They know you from radio. So come on over here and do it with us. And the rest is history.
Did you find that it was an easy transition because you knew most of them and interacted with them on the radio?
Yeah, the only difficult part was that obviously any opinions I had were the mayor's opinions, which was not the case when I was on the air. I could have my own. So that was a major change. That was a change. That was different.
That's usually what happens when you have term limits, because when you go, so do all of those opinions.
Oh yeah,
Bring in
absolutely,
new opinions.
absolutely.
And so, are you working with one of those agencies now? Current?
No, I am completely retired. I left the Jacksonville Transportation Authority last year in 2019. So yeah, I've been. February was my 1 year anniversary of being retired. I was doing some consulting work, marketing and public relation consulting work. Obviously, with COVID, there's not a lot of that activity going on, so I've taken a hiatus from that. And once things turn around again, perhaps we'll see if I'll get into something, at least in a part-time level.
Do you see going back into radio?
Well, with a national election coming up, I'd love to go back on radio to do what I used to do, but probably not. So many shows are syndicated now, Stuart, that
That's right.
there really is not a lot of local talk. You'll see local talk on sports stations because they want you to talk about the local teams and the local colleges and everything else. But as far as issue-oriented talk, there really is not a lot of local talk going on. I would also say, and I don't want this to offend anybody who's listening, but my views politically are not in line with most of our community. This is a very red city. And in fact, they just elected a Democrat as the president of our city council. And he was the former mayor of Jacksonville who ended up running for this city council and winning. But we haven't had a Democrat as president of the city council in years, just years. So I'm not sure that I would probably come on talking too much like MSNBC or CNN for the likes of a lot of people. If I went on as a Fox surrogate, then maybe I'd be more welcomed. But there's one thing I've learned about talk after 30 years. People don't tune in to those that they disagree with, which I find really incredible because even when I was doing talk radio, I was always going not just to others who shared my opinion, but I wanted to hear what everybody else was saying. But we're so divided today. We're so polarized as a community. People only want to hear what they believe in. They want that reinforcement and validity of what their thinking is. So I'm not sure there are too many stations in Florida. South Florida is a lot more liberal, a lot more democratic. And it was that way when I broadcast at WIOD and at WJNO. But today it's a different ballgame. It's a different scenario all over the place.
And I'm very much like you. I don't see that as being very healthy, because if you're going to put a fence between you and the other side, it seems to me that we'll never really move forward as a country. We remember growing up in the Midwest that even though there was a lot of disputes and different opinions between the various parties, it just seemed like that they would be able to sit down at the table and throw out all the ideas from both sides and look at all of the parts of those ideas and then put together the best of both to come up with a common plan to move forward. Today, you're absolutely right. It's my way or the highway. I don't even want to listen to what you have to offer, whether it's valid or not. And in my opinion, that's not healthy for the future of the country. And I would assume that you are thinking along the same lines.
Yeah, in fact, I heard this. This is not an original thought, so I heard this the other day on the air. But harken back to the days when Ronald Reagan was president and Tip O'Neill was the Speaker of the House. You had two feisty Irishmen who were leaders of this country, and yet they were great friends. They socialized together. From what I understand, Reagan would call Tip over to the White House all the time just for informal conversations. You also didn't have the media coverage that you have today, where you can't even go to the bathroom without it being reported. So
Right.
There was a lot of that situation going on. And don't forget, too, Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton. They ended up getting along and passing basically an incredible welfare bill when he was president, and
right.
got the Republicans to go along with it. So it's been done before, but ever since ever really, I hate to say it, but it's ever since Trump got in there that things have become so divisive. I don't remember George W. having that much trouble with the Democratic Congress as the White House is having today. Either Bush, George W. or H.W. So I don't know. Things have changed, and whether or not they'll ever get back to the same, I can't tell you. Who knows?
Well, you said earlier in the show, you used the phrase which I use a lot, the new normal. We will never go back to what we all perceived as the old normal lifestyle. It's going to be a new normal, and we have to be prudent about what that's going to mean. If you have a different opinion of what I have, you may walk away from our conversation with the same difference of opinion. But what is so wrong with sitting down and talking about it and trying to see what we can come up with? Because you might just have an idea that I may not totally agree with, but I can understand where that might work too. But it bothers me to think that the younger generation and all is being raised with this divisiveness that you've got to pick a team and you support that team and you don't even look at the team on the other side of the field. That we're just totally different. We can't have a successful future if we continue to think that way.
Well, I can't disagree with that at all. That's the question is, how do you do it? Because
our generation knew that. Our generation knew that. Our parents' generation knew that. But the younger generation, I don't think that they are as politically involved and politically active as we were or as they should be. That's probably the mayor. It's probably your mayor calling you.
No, I'm looking at my television, which puts the phone calls up on there, and it's Grand Rapids, Michigan, or Minnesota, rather.
Oh, right.
So it's either a robocall or somebody's looking for money, one or the other.
And I would probably put my money on the robocall.
Yeah, probably so. I'll see if anybody leaves a message on the voicemail.
Right.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
If I could get to it, I'd turn it off. But she'll be done in a minute, whoever this person is.
See, what I always wanted to do is I wanted to be able to do the voiceover like you're listening to right now. See, that would be a fun thing to do.
Wait a minute, they want me to punch one. I think I'll go and punch one to see what Shut up!
Yes. Yeah. Wait.
All right, they're gone. Oh, she hung up already.
Yeah. Before you punch one, don't punch that number yet. Listen to the other options.
Okay, I've got another story I've got to tell, and I was talking about this with Harris yesterday. Jimmy.
Okay. Is it Jim or James, or do we call him Jimmy?
No, when I answer the phone, I say, James, how are you? And then it's normally Jim. It's normally Jim. Everybody's got rid of their.
And we knew it as Jimmy.
Yeah, I know. But I was kidding him because he saw it as well, where you were putting the promotion of today's show on there, and you had a photo of the record that we recorded called Humpty Dumpty, which was done back in 1962, if I remember correctly.
Right.
And I said to Jim, I said, you notice, by the way, that he didn't turn it to the B side because he screwed up that chord so badly. And we both were talking about why didn't we redo that track? So
I remember why.
Chord, why not? We didn't have the money?
Because we only had the studio, I think, for an hour. We spent 50 minutes on Humpty Dumpty. And so we went to the B side and we only had 10 minutes to get that done. And as much as everybody remembers Humpty Dumpty, in all of my years, anytime I've ever mentioned Good Night, Sweetheart, everybody remembers that bad note that I hit on the piano. And we just didn't have time to do another take or edit it out.
Well, okay. Bennett just sent me a notice. He said, "Play it." He wanted you to play it on the air. I don't have I don't have the capability to do
Thank
it.
you.
But
Very. Of course, he would want me to play it. So, but
well,
actually,
he wanted to play "Goodnight, Sweetheart" because he was singing the lead in that.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And we did a great 4-part harmony in that song. You know, Humpty Dumpty was a whim. And by the way, for the folks that are listening and watching the show, this was a big deal back in 1962 when we released Humpty Dumpty. And if anybody really is interested in getting a copy of that 45 Humpty Dumpty that we recorded, I think we're down to about our last 14,000 copies.
Do you have them? Do you actually have those copies?
I just have the one. But you know what I have? I have the original hard disc that it was recorded on. I don't know how I ended up with that, but it was that disc that made the 45s.
Oh, all right. That was the master then, huh?
Yeah, that was the master.
They use that as the master. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And that may be one reason why they couldn't do a lot of editing back in those days, because you couldn't edit on a disc if you were doing it on.
You had to take another take. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to do another take. So interesting.
Humpty Dumpty by the Kingsmen. And we were the Kingsmen until another band by the same name came out with a little tune called Louie Louie.
Well, you know, it's interesting because you had already graduated when the Reflections became, a band, because we kind of morphed into this new band when you left and Bennett left and Huey left and a bunch of people from that class of '63 left. So the only people who were left were Jimmy and I, and then the musicians. I don't call myself a musician because I was a drummer. I'm sorry, drummers, but I wasn't a guitar player, or I wasn't a keyboard player or anything like that. But even then, there came another Reflections, and we had to change that and get out of it too. So we stayed with that. We stayed with that until the end of high school, and then Jimmy started a band at IU, which I became a part of for a while, called the Citations. And that was a bunch of guys from Sammy and ZBTs, I think, that were a part of that.
And when I went down to Indiana for a short time, I joined a group called the New Piltdown Men.
And what?
The Piltdown apparently was one of those old caveman eras, and the leader of the band decided to call it the New Piltdown Men. We were probably a garage band before the term garage band became popular. I mean, we were terrible.
Yeah. But we were a basement band, actually, if people remember. We used to rehearse a lot in my basement.
That's right. So. Well, it had to be at your house, because to have to pack up the drums and go back and forth for rehearsals.
That's true.
But we had some good times back in those days.
Do you remember the first gig that we did?
The first what?
The first engagement we did, the first show that we did, or dance that we did?
I don't remember whether was at Bethel?
No. Well, I think we may have done something like that just for a fun thing, but I think the first one we did was at Wilbur Wright Junior High.
Oh, okay, and yes.
There were 8 of us in the band.
8 of us in the band.
4 musicians. We got paid $40 for the 8 people.
For 8 people.
We all went to Candiano's Pizza, and we spent all $40 there on pizza after the show was over.
That's right. Yeah, we never saved a dime for new equipment.
What kind of equipment? You couldn't even get a kazoo with the amount of money.
Let's see. Should we all go out for pizza or buy a new microphone? Let's go for pizza.
Bennett just wrote. He said we had Kingston Trio shirts on, and that's true. We did. In fact,
blue and white striped shirts.
Yeah, that one photo that I have of some of the guys which is the only photo. Do you have any photos of the band performing?
Of us performing? No, I think I do have a picture of a still shot of all of us in our blue and white shirts.
Do you really?
Yeah.
You ought to put that up, Stuart, because I don't think I've seen that one.
I'll have to find. I'll forward it to everyone.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That would be fun. Well, I'm sure your audience is just enthralled with all of this personal talk going on between the two
Well,
of them.
hey, listen, it's
Yeah.
my show, and I'm opinionated, just like my guests.
Yeah, yeah. Unlike my situation, I had a program director, I had a sales manager, all of those people going after me if I did something they didn't like. So you've got
That's
a
right.
lot of freedom. A
You
lot of
just
freedom. That's great.
sit down and talk to yourself.
Right, right. Now,
Well,
were you in the KGVI studios before the pandemic hit? Did you do the show from there, or have you always done it from home?
no, we did it from the studio here. And our producer and owner, Mark Warner, relocated up to Michigan. So the show is being produced in Michigan and streaming, and as are a lot of radio broadcasts now, they're all being done from homes or secondary studios all over. We'll probably continue to do it streaming. It sure makes it easier for me to get guests like you who are 1,200 miles away to sit
Right.
and virtually be in the same room.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of the best of both worlds.
That's great. I think it's great. It really
So,
is.
well, it's been great talking to you again.
Thank you, Stuart.
We do it infrequently, and to all of those who are listening into the show and all, I hope you've had a good time spending the last hour with Mike Miller and myself. It's like a slice of the old days. And again, Mike, thank you very much. The best to you. Stay healthy, and the best to Jacksonville, Florida, and the area. And to all of you that have been tuning in this morning, thanks for being with us on Someone You Should Know. And be right here again next week. In fact, the way Mike used to end his radio show in college, say, and remember, if you tune in at the exact same time again next week, you're going to miss my show again.
Very good. Very
So
good.
I'll leave you with that also. Go out, make it a good day, a great weekend, and that's it from Someone You Should Know.